Okay? So the important thing about this is what we're trying to do as a group, as a community, is to define a set of skills for testers, but it is driven by the customer, not by the supplier. Okay? So there are no training providers involved. Okay? So it's not about training providers selling what they want to sell. It's about customers getting what they want. Okay? So that's how I look at it, and that's what I'm going to talk about. And the mechanics of how this will work are very simple. That's not very interesting. What's interesting, I think, is the reason why we have chosen to work a certain way. So I'm going to talk about the reasons for doing this, perhaps more than what we are doing. Okay? This is really annoying. Okay. So my heavy breathing, I don't do this very often, this heavy breathing thing. So that's marketing, let's forget that. So what I want to talk about is two things. I want to talk about why we need to think differently about testing, because the world is changing so quickly that testers are being kind of left behind a little bit. And we've never been the most vociferous people. You know, we don't shout and sing and dance too much in our projects. We just get on with the work a lot of the time. We're not the noisy people in projects. We let other people make all the noise. So we are not as forward as we should be. But we have a challenge. We have to change the way we think, and that's what I want to talk about mostly. And the second thing is I want to talk about what I'm doing in Cork, Ireland, and this, what we've called a Tester Skills Program. And I'll give you some background. I'll talk about how we'll structure the syllabus and the scheme, but I'm not going to give you much detail, because the detail is still being worked out. It's not finished, okay? Now, the important thing is, and something I want you to take away today, is that our goal is to teach testers to think for themselves. So you are independent, so that you can take control over what you do, rather than being a follower, if you like. Rather than following the project, you're part of the leadership of the project. That's where I think we should be. Does that make sense? Are we okay? So, a little bit of ancient history. 22 years ago, I was the chair of the first certification board in the UK. And the British Computer Society Information Systems Examination Board, Tester Certification Board, yes, that was me. That was back in 1997, 1998, with my good friend Dorothy Graham. And that evolved and got going pretty quick. The Germans, I think, were next to go, and then very quickly ISTQB arrived, didn't it? And some of you may already know about ISTQB. How many people have got a certification from ISTQB? Okay, I'm guessing that's about a third, maybe half. We'll see. So I'll talk about that a little bit too. Anyway, because I was the first chair of the first board, I think it's all my fault, okay? So, how many people are working in digital projects? Digital? Not many. Well, you're all working in digital. It's just a label. So in the West, everything is digital. IT, no, IT is gone. It's digital. Okay? So this is a Western message, but it's the same thing for you. It's the same.
Батарейки.
Hello? Is that good? Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to use this language called digital, this word digital, and all it means is everything to do with IT. Digital is the word that's being used in the West to describe IT. It's just marketing. It doesn't matter. It's just a label. So in the West, it's all, are you going digital? This is where business is going. And it's business-driven. Business are taking control of software. And that's a good thing. I know business people don't understand software, but they are our customers. They should have control over it. So I'm going to talk about digital for 20 seconds. Now, I think you've got a little book. You've got that in your bag? Chapter 1, okay? So I'm not going to talk about digital because it's in chapter 1. So let me talk about why testers have to change a little bit. The pressure on us has never been greater, has it? I think we have this challenge of being testers in organizations that are changing quickly. And we're all changing the way we build software. Okay, so in the past, we all used waterfall, structured, staged methods. And then Agile came along, and everybody is going Agile. And now we're hearing, with digital and more modern technologies, we're going to use continuous delivery, experimentation, logging, analytics, AI, machine learning. All these things are coming to make life harder for us. They don't make our lives easier. Okay, so we have to change. So the other thing with these approaches, these methods, these tools are not standardized. There's no one method will work. So every organization has to figure out how it works in a different way. So every one of you works in a different way. So how can someone like me tell 500 of you how to take an approach to software development, software testing, assurance, delivery? Everybody does it differently. That's a fact. So all I can suggest is, well, here are some ideas as to how you think and how you approach the problem and how you recognize a problem and how you understand that you've solved a problem. So I can't teach you how to do your jobs, but I can perhaps help you to think in a clearer way and use that way of thinking to do your jobs more effectively. Plus, you will appear to be the smartest person on the project because you are thinking for yourself. Okay? So that's the whole point of this session. Testers need to think for themselves. So I'm not going to talk about continuous delivery for very long, but I just want to use it as an example of how we need to change our thinking. So I'm sure, has everybody seen this idea of continuous delivery? Much shorter timescales, smaller scope of work, very rapid iterations, lots of automation, blah, 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 okay? I'm not going to ask you anymore. You know this, I guess. Now, if you look on the internet for a diagram, a picture, a schematic, a method for how continuous delivery works, you see all these things. But mostly people use this kind of figure of 8, this infinite loop. Infinity. Sounds good, doesn't it? What's that got to do with software? Absolutely nothing. But if we take that figure of 8 and stretch it out, you get this. And to me, that looks like waterfall. It's the same old idea. Okay? So, yes, we have to go back to the beginning, but we just do waterfall in smaller projects. That's not different at all, is it? So this is a challenge, okay? This is not good. People are not thinking. Do you recognize this picture, the testing pyramid? Everybody recognize that? You've also, oh, yeah, okay, you've all seen it. Isn't it wonderful? Except that if you put it next to a picture of the approach in the 70s and 1980s, you know, the V model, it's the same thing. Okay? People are not thinking. Okay? So this is disappointing. If you look for testing pyramid, you will see hundreds of images like that. Hundreds. Maybe thousands, I don't know. So it's just the 1980s V model all over again. So I'm not going to go through this, but this idea of staged thinking and using staged thinking to do continuous delivery, to do modern approaches, to do AI and machine learning and experimentation and rapid delivery, it doesn't work. Because Agile told us it didn't work 15, 18 years ago. So we know all this stuff doesn't work. That's why we've moved to Agile. And yet that same thinking is being used to describe more modern approaches. People are being lazy. So Agile being based on this idea is we need to make a move. We need to change something. So my suggestion is to think, because everybody does things differently, let's take away all the things that are different. And the things that are different are what I call logistics, testing logistics. So what I'm suggesting is, it's a bit like, what's it called? Oh, what's that movie? It'll come in a minute. I'll use a different analogy. I'm going to ask you to, Keanu Reeves. The Matrix, yes, sorry, I just had a mental block then. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm asking you to do is, remember Keanu Reeves, Neo, he's asked to free your mind. He's got to jump the building, okay? Free your mind. And what I'm going to suggest is you free your mind by forgetting logistics, just for a few minutes, okay? And the way I will describe this state of mind is, I'm going to say it this way. I'm going to say, I do not care whether you document your tests or not. I don't care whether you write your tests down on paper or just use them in your mind. I don't care whether you use tools to run tests or you do it by hand or you use some piece of magic. That's not relevant. That's logistics. Doesn't matter. I don't care whether you're agile, waterfall, continuous, something else. Don't care. I don't care what business you're in, whether it's in telecoms or healthcare or government or banking. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect the way you think about testing. I don't care whether you're using old technology or brand new bleeding edge technology. It's not relevant. It's not relevant to the way you think about testing. So when you take all these things away, some people think, oh my God, there's nothing left. But there is, and I have not got the time to tell you where I go next with this, but if you imagine, if you take away all the logistics, everyone is the same. Okay? And what I've done is I've tried to say, this is the old way, and it's a staged, clumsy, sequential process. Okay? We know it doesn't work very well. And what we have to move towards, the magic happens, what we're moving towards is a continuous process, and it's an event-driven process. Things happen which disturb our processes, but it's mostly about thinking. Okay? It's mostly about how we perceive our requirements, our models of those requirements, our understanding of those requirements, how we derive tests from those requirements or from the system itself, and so on. It's all about thinking. This is my suggestion. And if we are better able to think, it doesn't matter what logistics we use, because we can cope with anything. We become a super tester. Okay? Now, if you want to see a description of how this is put together, there's a webinar I did. There's actually lots of stuff. If you search for new model testing or meet my name, whatever, you'll find it on the internet. There's about 10 different videos. That's probably the best. I introduced this thing in chapter 4 of the book, okay? And there's a little description there, not a full description. Now, the issue about this is a model of your thought processes, of your thinking. And there are two states your mind is in. One is exploration on the left. We explore requirements. We interview people. We sketch pictures on whiteboards. We look at the old system. We look at the new system. We gather information to understand what the system should do. Having done that, we build models. Now, systems are complex. So in order to understand the complexity, we build mental models. Sometimes we write those models down. But I don't care. That's logistics. We build models in our minds. When we have that model in our mind, we think, aha, I understand what this system should do. Now I can test. Now, when we have that mental model that we trust, we can go into the testing side. So we have these two modes of thinking. But it's more complicated than that. You know, we have sources of information, which can be anything, all sorts of things. The system, the old system, the new system, requirements, specifications, pictures on the wall, conversations, our own experience. All these are sources of information. And it gets really complicated. One of the things that I'm suggesting people do in a much more systematic way is to challenge our sources of information. So we have this idea of challenging. And I'm not going to talk about it more, but watch the video if you're interested in understanding how this model works. Okay? Because everything I do now, and for 5 years now, I've based around this picture. It explains everything for me. Okay? It's not a universal law. It's a model. It's wrong. It's useful. I believe it's useful. Yeah, it's in the book. I need some water. It's really annoying me. This is right under my nose. That's why I'm breathing into it. Now you can hear me drink as well. God, you can see me drink when. So, don't go there. So, the 10 thinking activities, each one of these activities, inquiring, modelling, informing, applying, ing, they're all activities, thinking activities. For every thinking activity, there's a physical activity, different for every one of you. But the thinking is the same. You don't have the same thoughts, but you have the same thought process. That's what I am suggesting. So you're not all drones, okay? I'm suggesting you all have the different thoughts, but the process is kind of similar, right? So that diagram isn't a process with inputs and outputs, entry and exit criteria, procedures to follow. No, your brain is doing 3, 4, 5 of those things simultaneously all day. That's how good your brain is. When the phone rings, an event interrupts you. You have to do something to react, and your thinking might move. When you learn some more information, your thinking might change. When a bug happens in a test, your thinking might change. So we are event-driven. So we need a different way of thinking to deal with events in that way. Waterfall, structured, stage thinking doesn't work that way. Have I sold the idea now to you? You've got it. So, these aren't stages of thinking, but they're modes of thinking. That's the way I conceive of it. So our processes in building software should be event-driven, not staged. A bit like our software. So status, when we look at the status of a feature, we tend to think, oh, it's on the right, it's done, or it's still being planned, or it's in development, or it's in test. These are not statuses. These aren't statuses. The status of a feature is what we think of that feature. Okay, what are we thinking about? Where are we on that diagram with the 10 thinking activities? What is our thinking? So when we talk to our colleagues, when we say, what's the status of this feature? Really, what we should ask is, what are you thinking about against this feature? And the developer might say, I'm done. And the tester might say, wait a minute. The requirements still have I've got some interesting challenges with the users here. The requirements aren't fixed yet. We don't trust the requirements yet. Now, where the feature is on a Kanban board or whatever you're using doesn't capture that information. It's the difference in thinking that causes us to fall over in our projects, okay? Because we have different perceptions of status. So with continuous collaboration, what we're really doing is sharing our thoughts. Yes, we can put things on a whiteboard for the managers, but day to day, it's the interactions between people that make progress. Continuously asking questions, continue answering questions, continually challenging each other. Are you sure you understand this requirement, Mr. User? Yes, 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 yes. Well, can I give you an example of the tests I'm going to run? And what's the user going to say? You can't do that. Or something stupid like that. We challenge requirements, okay? So that's why testing is more than just finding bugs at the end. It's about challenging everybody's thinking in our projects. Okay? It's a much greater role. So collaboration works that way. So a very different skill set is required. If we think differently, if we think more intelligently, we need different skills. That's kind of obvious. So I talked about this about 5 years ago. So what I'm talking about today is not 5 years old, it's current. But what I'm trying to say is I sketched this out years ago, and it wasn't too far off. Now what's interesting about this, the only thing interesting about this, don't worry about it, I'm not selling this idea to you, is this stuff on the right. Is what ISTQB, TMMI and those things are doing is they're talking primarily, mostly, about test process management, and they're talking about methodology. They're talking about logistics. If you look at the table of contents for the foundation scheme, okay, it's 70-something pages, and it's huge. It's massive, isn't it? And if you look at the table of contents, all the things I said I do not care about are in that syllabus. Take a look. All the things I say don't matter are what is in that syllabus. There's a couple of things that are useful, of course there are. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's useless. But my challenge to them is they should talk more about the thought process and less about methodology. Because it's mostly about one way of doing the job. But everybody does it differently. If you're given one way of doing the job, you're going to try that, find it doesn't work, and then do something different. That's what's actually happening in the industry. Not many people use ISTQB to define their test processes. I think that's true. So I thought, okay, I've got something here. So the sort of game that we're in here is, what the certification schemes do is they teach what I would say is logistics, mostly logistics. The stuff I say doesn't matter. They offer one way of doing things, I said that. A lot of the challenge in the certification schemes is remembering definitions, a glossary term, sure, but also a way of doing things. There's only one process for doing incident management, but everybody does it differently. What else we got? They teach test design as a procedure to follow. They give you a simple requirement saying, it's equivalent partitions. But when you read a real requirement, it doesn't tell you, the user will be able to do da-da-da, it's equivalence partitions now, use that technique. Da-da-da. It's state transition now. You don't get that hint. You're not taught to make that choice. And that is a choice of model. So what we should be teaching is not procedures for test design, but we should be teaching modeling and deriving tests from those models. That is test design. So we need to think about thinking a lot more. And the exams mostly are multiple choice. So they're checking your memory of the syllabus. They're not checking whether you can test. Isn't that true? Am I upsetting anybody here? Is anyone upset? Excellent. Right. I'm not working hard enough, obviously. So I want to talk about what I'm doing in Ireland, and I've got 15 minutes. Excellent. So I'm doing this work in Cork. This is where Cork is. If you don't know, look at the magic. I love this kind of thing. Oh, that didn't work, did it? This is a very old PC, I have to say. Okay. Oh, there you go. That's what it was meant to look like. Yeah, that's what it was meant to look like. Okay, so it's the second city of Ireland. So basically, Cork, they look after the south of Ireland. Okay, so what am I doing? I've been commissioned by these guys, IT at Cork SkillNet, who are a government organisation. They're sponsored by the Irish government to support better skills in the software community in all Ireland. I'm talking to the southern half, okay? And the other group on the right are like a special interest group. This is like a user community, the tester community in all Ireland. And I was asked to facilitate a meeting of about, I think it was about 18 or 20 companies who said, we've got a problem with testers. We can't find good testers. We get good graduates, but they know nothing. Nothing. Not nothing about testing, they know nothing. And we have to teach them and retain them and build up their skills base so they are useful members of our teams. So, this was the title of the meeting, Developing Testing Skills to Address Product Quality Challenges. And I'm going to do this quickly because it repeats some of the things I've already said. Testing is obsolete. Some company managers think we don't need testers. Developers can do everything, can't they? Testers, we don't need testers, they can be replaced by tools. Yeah, great, fantastic. How do testers add value to the team? We don't yet, even after all these years, have a good story to tell about how valuable we are to our projects. We don't have that story because we talk about logistics all the time. It's really boring for people. We should talk about what's going on, what people are thinking within our projects. Some companies say, we're all engineers, we all write code, we all test code, we all know everything. Yeah, maybe. We had a great period in the 2000s, after the year 2000 challenge, because testing became suddenly much more important to everybody. It's great, but now people are forgetting that testing is important, perhaps. Technology is changing. You've heard that before. So the goal of this meeting was to say, well, what can we do? And ultimately, this was it's like all we can do is not solve all the world's problems. We can just look at testers and testing and try and figure out what testers and people who test need. So I didn't say this before, but this isn't just for testers. This is for people who test. It's for developers too. They need to think differently too. Okay? So, what have we got here? So this is what I'm commissioned to deliver, among other things. So I've got to provide a skills inventory. Done that. Got a list of skills. It's huge. There's about 45 different categories of skills. 40-something skills. All sorts of stuff. Then there's which skills depend on other skills? There's kind of a roadmap. Dependencies, okay? We've already got this sense that we'll have a foundation level, what do we call it? Advanced, and then a master. We're just looking at foundation today. It's got to be done partly online because the timing of it is substantial. It's much bigger than the existing schemes. Sending people on a 7 working day training course is not practical. Maybe you spread it over a year. Maybe we do a lot of it online. But we know we've got to be partly online, partly classroom, and so on. Also, SkillNet, my sponsors, say this isn't the Paul Gerrard scheme. This is a scheme for Ireland. So what I'm creating is a specification for SkillNet to invite other suppliers to build material. Okay, so the idea is for the industry, it's not just me. Okay, that's the idea. This is where I am. Enough said. And I bet you can't read that. Don't worry, I'm sure the slides will become available, and I'll give you some contact details at the end if you're interested in seeing what I'm doing. Very happy to give you more information. I will not bombard you with marketing. I've got nothing to sell. Okay? Yet. Okay, but you can see, let me be fair. So there's something here. So it's like core modules. So we've got this is like a 3-day class here. And this is like another 3 days. And essentials is about motivation. Why do we test? What are the real reasons we do this? Fundamentals, stuff you already know maybe. Designing tests. We talk about challenging requirements. Mechanisms for challenging requirements. Getting the story right. Then we have basic techniques, business process, blah, blah, blah. Yes, we do some planned testing, a lot of exploratory testing, We talk about collaboration, communication, and testing in teams. This is the team stuff. It's really important. We are an information service to our teams. We should know how to deliver that information. Lots of people talk about systems thinking. Well, systems thinking, it's just an hour or so, but I introduced this idea of systems thinking. Okay, and then we have modeling, it's really important, and then critical thinking. Again, how do we understand, how do we believe what we are told? How do we believe what's written in requirements, what we are told by users? The rest of the stuff, I mean, is all very sensible. Okay, there's nothing controversial here. There's just a lot of it. And doesn't that make sense? We've got to understand an awful lot in order to do our job. That's why we need a lot of skills. It's very simple, but it's a tough sell. It's a lot of work. This is about 40 hours training, approximately. That's quite a lot, about 6 or 7 days. So how does it work? So there's about 40 hours of training, but behind that, all the assignments are the early stuff in the material is going to be things like, here are 5 questions you ask your boss. Have a conversation, or your peers. Who are stakeholders? What do we want? What do they want? How do we communicate with them? What information do we provide to them for them to make decisions, because they are our customers? And so on. So these are quite difficult conversations, but we're asking testers to find out the logistics from their own team. I can't teach you logistics. Nobody can teach you logistics because they'll get it wrong. Only you can do that when you ask the right questions of your peers, your managers, your stakeholders, your ops people, whoever. So what we're trying to do is give you a set of questions that you ask your local teams. And that's how you learn. As much time is spent in the conversation with your local team as there is in a classroom. So you're going to be really unpopular people if you do this, because you're going to be asking really awkward questions, difficult questions. But that's our job, to ask difficult questions. So the answers to the questions come from your peers or from practice. Okay, yes, there's exercises, that's the idea, and this is what we're building now. So all I'm trying to say is some of it is classroom work, a lot of it, maybe half, 2/3, 60-70%, could be practice, practical work, conversations with your peers, within your teams. And that's what we call foundation. Right, this is 5 minutes to the end. All right. No time for questions, excellent. We're not competing with certification. Okay, this isn't the point. I'm doing something different from certification. Okay, because we're not teaching logistics. Doesn't compete. Those are the kind of the numbers. It's 100 to 120 hours of development, personal, professional development, not classroom work. The idea of all this is very simple. It's teaching you to understand your craft, your trade, to a deeper level. So you become a master, but also that you can teach other people. Because one of the things I think we're finding more and more is good testers are becoming coaches and mentors to their teams. Okay? So I don't want to dwell on this except to say, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I'm not going to say that. I haven't got time, I'm sorry, there's too much to give you. But they were trying to get testers to behave slightly differently. We're asking testers to become more proactive members of their team. We want testers to become leaders in their team, not followers. Okay, I don't mean telling people what to do, but people should come to you for advice, not the other way around. Okay? The goal of testing is to increase understanding. What our models are, our mental models are our understanding of requirements, the system, and our own process. So what we're trying to do is this. So we're trying to challenge you guys to think for yourselves, firstly, but to be good, to be excellent in your craft, but also to teach others to be excellent too. And that's really what we're trying to do in this thing in Ireland. Okay? So I'll be talking about this all over the place because I'm trying to encourage people to think the same way and maybe set up your own scheme. Do your own thing. Maybe you should do this too. It seems to be the right idea to me. With that, I'm done. I'm finished. If you want to know more, there's some details there. Contact me or join the mailing list, or I'm on LinkedIn. I connect with anybody, don't worry. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your great speech. And now it's questions time. Who wants?
Nobody. Oh, yes, excellent.
Hi, Paul.
Hi.
That was really excellent what you said.
Thank you.
And I'm interested in such a question. We have a lot of developer courses, and in a university we already have a great set skill that developers get, and at least they have a basic when they graduated. My question could be all that you said to build all this skill set in the university. Could we have this specialty that we can have some people that graduated and really could start to work with, have this basis, you know?
I can't say what should happen here, but in Ireland it came up very quickly because all these guys are hiring graduates.
Yes.
They're all and they don't know anything. Not quite. It's not quite.
I think it's common thing.
And I think the view was that if, as when we get something off the ground and we have the material, we have the classes, then we go to the university and say, this is what we're teaching your graduates. It would be better if you taught them this, and then it saves us a lot of time and money. They will be more ready to take on real work. But not yet. I think it's not the first thing we do. We have to have, it's almost like we have to have a success before we can tell the universities, you're not doing it right. Because they'll just say, well, we're universities. You can't tell us what to do. You know nothing.
It's like the problem is bureaucratic. They just cannot take what we can afford them from us.
It's also there's a thing called not invented here. You know, we don't like being told what to do. Nobody likes to be told what. You don't like being told what to do. You know, we're all the same. So yeah, we have to negotiate our way. But if we've got something that's working, I think that's a better position. So.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Sorry. I'm sorry. You'll have to run. No, it's okay. Don't run. Don't run.
Hello, my name is Andrew. I want to thank you for your talk. It was really interesting, but there was one point that I didn't quite understand. So you're saying that it's in a pilot stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, and can you share the results that are now in the teams that are implementing your method of thinking? What other team members, what other members of team thinking about this approach, and how does this approach change in greater scheme process?
Well, the first thing to say is I'm running a bit late, so I don't have any data on that because I've not finished writing the material. So I don't have people looking at it yet, but this week, sorry, not this week, next week, the first 50% is available now online, but I'm going to go over there in about 6 weeks and teach a full 3-day class, and we'll see what happens. And that will be the, do you remember there's the core modules and then there's the rest of it? Do you remember that? There's a central stuff, and then there's the other modules. It's just the core stuff we're at the moment. So if you join the mailing list in about 6 weeks, I hope to give some feedback and say, and answer your question. I can't do it today, I'm sorry. I'd love to. I want to know too. My expectations are they'll love it. What would you expect? They'll think it's a bit crap. No, I'm not going to say that. My expectation is I think they'll think it very different, very challenging, and opens their minds. That's what I want them to come. Obviously, I want that to happen. If it doesn't, I need to work harder. But that's the goal, to get people to think for themselves, to be independent. That's really important. Is that okay? Yeah, you're welcome.
Hello, my name is Vitaly. Thank you
Hi.
for your speech. According to my experience, there is a big difference between what customers want and what they need. They usually want test automation or such things, and they usually need all the things you have listed in your speech. My question is, do you think that marketing of our craft is should be included in your testing program? Because if you don't understand customers that they really need not test automation but something else, they won't require you to do it.
Okay. Why do we test? We test on behalf of other people to give them information to make decisions. So the chair of the management board that runs the 100 million ruble project, or 100 billion ruble project, whatever the numbers are, or even a 100 ruble project, they want to make a choice as whether they can go live or not go live. So what information do they need to have in order to make that decision? That's one of our, if we're testing on behalf of users, whatever, at that level, what information do we provide? Well, they want to understand a model that we have to provide a model that they understand. If they want to test things against their business process, we use their business process as our model. We trace paths, we measure coverage, we demonstrate that all the critical features work in the right places in their business process, and so on and so forth. So those stakeholders have a different need from developers. Developers are our stakeholders too. We test for developers. I know we'd like them to test better, but we test for developers too. Their model of their world is different. So testers have to understand at a more technical level the structure and organization of the software and the systems, and we test the collaboration between modules, we test the accuracy of the rules within low-level components, and so on and so forth. So they want to see models at a lower level. They want to see our tests derived from those models at a lower level, and we pass information on that basis. This is not, it's not a one, every stakeholder has a different requirement, so we have to understand stakeholders. So on the syllabus, there's a managing stakeholder. Sorry, it took me a long time to get there. But the principle is we have to understand our customers. When I go into a company and say, and I ask, we've got a problem in testing. Okay, I'll go and talk to some testers. What question would you ask the testers? I usually say, well, who are you testing for? Who are you doing this for? Well, I'm doing it for my boss. Yeah, but he's another tester. Who are you doing this for? Oh, don't know. Who's your customer? Oh, don't know. What are you doing for your customers? Oh, don't know. That's the industry. That's how bad it is. That's why we need to change. You're welcome. No problem. Good question.
Well, you should choose the best question.
All right.